Hi there. My name is DG Valdron. Welcome to my attic. I'm a writer. These are some of my books. Today, the topic is Harlan Ellison. Specifically, Harlan Ellison was a dick. All right. Now, I'm a writer, as I said, and I've recently written a book, Starlost, Unauthorized, and the Quest for Canadian Identity. It's a really great book, and it says some interesting things. But what we're going to be talking about today is the role of Harlan Ellison in the story. Now, here's the lovely thing about Harlan. He was famous. He was definitely a brilliant writer. And quite often, he could be a wonderful human being. He could also be just a complete piece of work. Back in 1973, around about near the height of his career, he got involved with some people at Fox and ended up pitching a television show. That ended up being a Starlost, and things went very, very badly after that. And after that, um, Harlan never let it go. He told his story in an essay called We're Not in Kansas Anymore, Toto. We gave an interview to the CBC. He gave a 2-hour lecture on it at some Kansas thing. He told a story many, many times about how he got completely just, screwed over on Starlost and how everybody involved was a cheap hack nobody and how, he was the great victim and a great genius and how everybody else in the process was utterly terrible. All right. Well, good for him. He's had a lot of opportunities to, give his side of the story. Um, Maybe there's another side. And so I'm going to just run through it. Harlan tells the story. He tells it many times, and he tells it differently each time because he's basically a storyteller. But when you're changing your story a little bit, altering the facts, that may mean you're not terribly credible. So let's kind of go through Harlan's thing. Harlan says back around February of 1973, he got called into the offices of one Robert Klein, and he was invited to pitch a few series. Um, the pitch that they went with was of a generation ship lost in space, the crew dead, and a couple of inhabitants on the generation ship discovering that, oh gosh, we're on a ship and it's headed into a sun. Okay, very good premise. Not a problem. Well, he liked it. Robert Klein liked it, and based on that, Harlan produced like a 12-minute audio tape. And this becomes the first great outrage against Harlan Ellison. Klein transcribed the audio tape and circulated it to sell the show. Okay, fair's fair. That was kind of a low, sneaky thing for Klein to do. But on the other hand, Harlan had been hanging around Hollywood for, 15, 20 years by now? Give me a break. The guy's not naive. I think, speculatively, yes, this was unethical, but I think they were both kind of giving like a nod and a wink. Anyway, so Starlost eventually, within a month or two, apparently gets sold in Canada, and something else is happening. The writer's strike comes in. Now, Robert Klein, although he is a perfidious human being and awful in Harlan Ellison's eyes, did not create the writer's strike. That just happened to him, to everybody else. My guess is because of the writer's strike, the series ended up going to Canada because that was outside the jurisdiction of the Screen Actors Guild. So they could actually produce it, so they could sell it as a product. Okay. Also, not perfidy on the part of Robert Klein. Also, not some great moral transgression. All right, move forward. Harlan Ellison refuses to do any work on the project while the writer's strike is going on. Completely fair. I understand that, respect that, that's honorable. And I can understand as well that Robert Klein has his back up against the wall and he is desperate to get things done and he is, pulling all sorts of crooked and sleazy shenanigans, or people associated with or close to him or inspired by him are doing so. Yeah, that's Hollywood for you. And none of that is ethical, and none of that is justified. But somewhere along the way, ACTRA, the Screen Actors Guild in Canada, which was dealing with writers, announces that this is a Canadian show with Canadian content. And so Harlan Ellison goes to work and he does the Bible. This is April 10th, 1973. Okay. And then here's what goes wrong. Harlan Ellison basically does nothing. He's supposed to be the head writer of the show. He's supposed to be the series script editor. He is supposed to write 6 episodes. He does nothing. He basically drags his feet over the next several months until finally he turns in a script, Phoenix Without Ashes, which is largely unfilmable. You know, it's beyond the production capacity. They don't have the money for it. They don't have the budget. They don't have the football field sized stadium sound stages for it. They don't have the crowds of extras. This is kind of, a standard thing with television. You write a script and then people figure out how to adapt it, how to shoot it for television, how to make it within a budget. Harlan Ellison, at this point, becomes completely outraged, throws a tantrum, and apparently spends the rest of his life bad-mouthing the show. Okay, I gotta say this. Harlan, you should have put on your big boy pants. Okay? The problem with Ellison is that he was basically a front-end guy. He's not involved in production. He's not involved in script editing. No, he just kind of writes his first draft of the script, the second draft, and then he just kind of goes off someplace. But that's not what the show needed. It wasn't what was wanted. It wasn't anything that was functional. If you're doing a television show, you have to have scripts in advance. You have to have everything in advance because you have to budget for it. You have to budget for episode after episode, which means you have to hire your directors and cast. And you're not casting generic actors for every episode. No, you have to cast based on the script. You have to build sets based on the script. You have to commission effects based on the script. The director has to read the script and figure out how they're going to shoot it, or if they can shoot it. And sometimes the script needs to be revised for functionality. And Ellison was doing none of that. His job was to write 6 scripts. He did one, turned in late, and it was first draft. Thank you very much for that. So now there's short 5 scripts. He did some work with a few writers in Canada late in the day. But ultimately, a lot of what goes on with the show, what goes wrong with the show, comes down to Harlan Ellison not understanding the requirements of television production, not understanding what his role needed to be to make this show function, and frankly, being lazy, procrastinating, doing nothing, wasting time. As the deadlines get tighter and tighter and tighter, and people are literally screaming desperately. He did very little work working with other writers, and he did some things. But it's a commitment. It's not a casual thing. Ultimately, while not everything that went wrong with the Starlost and not all the troubles that the show had come down to Harlan Ellison, he did a lot of things, or actually failed to do a lot of things, that contributed to problems. And yet, he was the guy that told the story. He was the guy that talked. Nobody else really got his platform to give their side of the story. Nobody else got to say, oh yeah, Harlan was a dick to us. Nobody else got to say, we needed these things done early in this stage. We needed these things in process. And Harlan Ellison was nowhere to be found. Instead, Harlan just tells his story. And I'll tell you about something about his story. If you listen to it, if you listen carefully to the sequence of events, the timelines don't match up. I mean, I was surprised. I was kind of like, going through, listening to him on YouTube or CBC and stuff. And he's saying, oh, yeah, this happens here, and this happens here, and this happens here. Bum, bum, bum. No, no. The writer's strike came and went. He no longer had an excuse, but he still didn't do anything. Like I said, great writer. Sometimes a really wonderful human being. But on this, he was a dick and he was dishonest about it. So that's my verdict on Harlan Ellison and Starlost and the Quest for Canadian Identity.